From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
The Republican presidential candidates not named Donald Trump held their second debate Wednesday night at the Reagan Presidential Library, while Donald Trump stayed away and took the time to address auto workers in Detroit. Well, after this debate, are we any closer to seeing which of the non-Trump candidates could emerge to challenge Donald Trump one-on-one? Welcome. I'm Paul Gigot with the Wall Street Journal opinion pages, and I'm here with Kim Strassel and Kyle Peterson. Welcome to you both. Donald Trump wasn't the main focus of the debate by any stretch on Wednesday, as the candidates hit each other on stage more than they hit Trump as they tried to stand out in the crowd. Let's listen to Nikki Haley, the former South Carolina governor, take on Ron DeSantis.
You banned fracking, you banned offshore drilling, you did it on federal lands, and you took green subsidies that you didn't have to take.
Governor DeSantis, you were mentioned. You have the right to respond. 30 seconds.
Yeah. I just did a plan out in West Texas for American energy dominance. We're going to choose Midland over Moscow. We're going to choose the Marcellus over the Mullahs, and we're going to choose Bakken over Beijing, and we are going to lower your gas prices. We are going to get that job done because it's important for our national security. It's important for jobs, and that's one of the best ways to drive down inflation.
Governor DeSantis. Governor DeSantis. Governor DeSantis, this question is for you.
Our voters enacted a constitutional amendment.
You banned it before they voted.
Doesn't allow. No, it's not true.
You banned it before they voted, and not only that, fracking wasn't. They didn't vote on fracking. She's
totally wrong.
So Ron DeSantis is going to choose alliteration and parallelism over a straightforward sentence, Kim, with that Bakken over Beijing. But anyway, did Haley score some points there, do you think, with Ron DeSantis? What do you think?
I understand the temptation for these guys on stage to go after each other because that's who's present right there. And she wants to take him out. She's been rising in the polls. Good for her. And so she views him as her prime target. There were some problems with some of the accusations she made. They're not entirely all correct. But I think it was notable that this was her new strategy. And I think overall what you saw happening in that debate yesterday, while nobody really rose above the scrum, nobody necessarily fully distinguished themselves, you are beginning to see two tiers there where you've got Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, who've had a decent couple of debates. Ron DeSantis also had a good debate yesterday, looking more and more as the kind of main contenders to Donald Trump. Their poll numbers are, in his case, staying the same. Hers are ticking up versus a lot of other people who were in there last night, you know, whether it's Tim Scott or Mike Pence, Chris Christie, even Vivek Ramaswamy, who were desperate to get into this brawl, but still just are not getting any traction. And I think that raises a question of how much longer do some of these guys stay in there.
Another candidate who, Tim Scott, you mentioned, the South Carolina senator, trying to show more energy and not be as much passed by in the debate as he was the first time. And he took it to Vivek Ramaswamy, the entrepreneur. Let's listen to that exchange.
Vivek just said we were all good people, and I appreciate that because last debate, he said we were all bought and paid for. And I thought about that for a little while and said, you know, I can't imagine how you could say that knowing that you were just in business with the Chinese Communist Party and the same people that funded Hunter Biden millions of dollars was a partner of yours as well. It's not nonsense.
So look, here's what I want to respond. These are good people who are tainted by a broken system, and it's not the fault of anybody who's involved.
Some of us are tainted.
Excuse me. Thank you for speaking while I'm interrupting. While I'm speaking.
Well, you said bought and paid for.
If I may finish.
You can't be on both sides.
Couple of interesting things there, Kyle. One is that Vivek Ramaswamy tried a different strategy. He was going to be not the brash Trump understudy who knows how to fight, but he's going to be the unifier of the party and try to show a different side of his personality. But the other candidates weren't going to let him forget that previous debate where he had indeed called them all bought and paid for. So you had that exchange. And Tim Scott trying to elbow his way into the debate. I don't know. Did you think he made a breakthrough here?
Well, he certainly did better than I think he did in the first debate. And by the way, I love the little slip that Vivek Ramaswamy said there. He said, "Thank you for speaking while I'm interrupting," which was a pretty good summary of several minutes, at least, of the debate last night. I guess I agree with Kim's analysis here that you have kind of a division now between the top two non-Trump challengers and the rest of the field. And part of that is just that they seem to have the broad support to potentially put together a coalition of Republican voters across geographies. Nikki Haley is now number 2 in New Hampshire, Ron DeSantis number 3. And in Iowa, it's the reverse. Ron DeSantis is number 2 and Nikki Haley is number 3. The challenge, I think, is I still don't see what the incentive is for any of these other candidates to get out. I do think Tim Scott had a better night in the second debate than he did in the first debate. And so he leaves feeling like he's accomplished something. He's moving upward on the right trajectory. Vivek Ramaswamy is polling better than anyone could have expected out of a young entrepreneur that nobody had heard of, basically. I think Vice President Mike Pence is saying a lot of the right things, but he has a challenge in that a lot of the Trump base just will never vote for him. But I think he's running in part for posterity. He's running in part for the soul of the Republican Party. Chris Christie, I think, is an animated debater and can be interesting to watch, but he has a similar sort of problem in that a lot of the base doesn't like him, but he's polling at high single digits in New Hampshire. And then you have Doug Burgum. He was the guy on the far left of the stage. And if you look at the polling threshold to make yesterday's debate, you had to get 3% in the polls to participate. And the next debate on November 8th, they're ratcheting that up to a whopping 4%. And so he may now think, I've gotten just enough attention that maybe I can get over that hurdle. And so I think we're slow rolling into the Iowa caucuses, perhaps, with this field still split 7 ways.
Well, to compound the point, Chris Christie would give you a pushback and say, hey, don't overlook me because I'm now, in some polls, I'm second in New Hampshire. And, of course, he's not running at all in Iowa, so he's skipping that state, so you can't hold that against him, he would argue. And he's saying if I can break through in New Hampshire, then I'm in this race too, although I would agree with you, Kyle, that his burden is like Pence, that those two candidates are the ones that most Republicans say they could not support. I do like the fact that Christie is in the debates, Kim. I like the fact that he's willing to take on Donald Trump, unlike some of the others. I think that's pretty interesting and valuable. He took on Trump again for ditching the debate, even if his Donald Duck line fell somewhat flat at the end of what was a pretty important point. But let's talk about Mike Pence a little, because he did get some endorsements this week, Kim. Ed Fulner, former head of the Heritage Foundation, and some other prominent conservatives did endorse him. But he doesn't connect somehow from the stage.
Yeah, on paper, Mike Pence is an awesome conservative candidate. I really love his policies. I love the fact that he's been willing to talk about this divide in the Republican Party between the majority of the party that's still very much on board with Reagan-esque approach to governance, but a growing minority that has become a lot more isolationist. He used the term populist. I'm not sure I agree with that word, but talking a little bit more about sort of class envy, bitter divides, politicians who are increasingly laying on corporations for their profits and saying we need to get out of world affairs and focus on things at home, this brand of national conservatism, which is called. So I love he's willing to talk about all that. But there is something in the translation on stage that Mike Pence comes across as he's a little earnest for a lot of people. He lacks that fire in a day and age when people are looking for fighters that really want to get in there and scrum it up with the left. He just doesn't seem to have that personality. And I think he also has this ongoing problem, Paul, where he's struggling to make clear how he can both praise his work that he did during the Trump presidency and policies, criticize the president now and somehow make the argument for why he's now running against the former boss who he thought did a good job. That's just a tough message to get across. Things would look a lot different if January 6th hadn't happened, but it's just he's in a very difficult spot.
Yeah, I agree. The MAGA base will not forgive him for not doing what Donald Trump wanted him to do and not count the electoral votes on January 6th, which I thought was his finest hour as a public servant myself. But the MAGA base won't forgive him for that. And then some of the other Republicans won't forgive him for the 4 years he spent with Donald Trump. So it's a tough message for him. I agree with you, Kim. He would make an excellent president if he could get into office. In many ways, maybe the best of those on stage in terms of his seasoning, judgment, and general strong character.
And convictions.
And convictions, exactly. That's a better word.